Hello, welcome to another episode of the Intel with Greg Cosell on the Inside the Birds platform. I'm Geoff Mosher from Inside the Birds, alongside my Inside the Birds co-host Adam Caplan, and of course we've got Greg Cosell with us to really put a bow here on the NFL draft prospect evaluation process. Now, like we've been saying for a couple of weeks, when we do this show with Greg, there are a few guys each week that he hasn't seen, so we saved this last episode, Greg, just for you to go through kind of random positions, and we're going to focus on certain positions and certain guys that we think the Eagles are going to be paying attention to. If not in the first round, then maybe in the second. We know how many picks they have. We know Howie Roseman likes to maneuver, add picks when he can. He'll trade picks. So there's a bunch of guys we want to go through with you. And we want to start off on defense because we know that the Eagles really need an upgrade there. And linebacker is not a position yet we've really talked a lot about. Don't know that you know how it is with the Eagles. They don't take off the ball linebackers, or at least they haven't in over 30 years in the first round. But second round, even Adam and I have kind of debated whether they would do that this year or not. But let's go through some of the main prospects there. So let's start with the small school kid, Troy Andersen from Montana State, and what you've observed by seeing him on tape.
Yeah, well, this was the first year he played linebacker full time. He's one of those guys that came there, played running back, played quarterback, played some linebacker as a junior, in addition to playing offense. And then this year was a full-time linebacker. And there's so many factors that come into play when you try to project this kid. Number one, he's a small school kid. And that means something to some people. He had the superhero combine performance. So he clearly has athletic and physical traits. So that will be a factor in the evaluation. So he's got prototypical size and length. I mean, he's over 6'3", he's over 240 pounds. His athleticism is really pretty good. I mean, he's given that size too. He can run. He's got stride length. He can play sideline to sideline. I think because he played so much zone coverage at Montana State, he didn't play a lot of man. Hardly played any man. I think I watched a number of games. I don't really recall him matching up to tight ends. So that's a projection. But he played zone, and I thought he played it pretty well. I think he had a pretty good feel for spatial awareness. Because he hasn't played a lot of linebacker, the one thing he's not, despite his size, is he's really not a physical box player. He's much more of a mover and a runner than he is a physical player. Now, that could just be a function of lack of experience playing the position.
Now this kid's a former quarterback or something,
and a running back.
And a running back. And there are some plays this year where he went to the offensive side of the ball, right? Correct? Where I don't know if you analyzed that while you're watching him defensively, but I think they used him in certain like option runs and things like that.
Yeah. They did a lot of that, and that's what he was. I mean, he was a full-time quarterback one year. He was a running back one year. I think he's the kind of kid that would probably start out his career as a nickel player because he has play speed, he has range, he has very good zone coverage ability. So a team that plays a higher percentage of zone, I think he would, in their sub defenses, I think he would fit that well. Anything beyond that is a projection that he could develop that. That's the thing. I mean, none of these, certainly Troy Andersen, no player comes in as a finished product. Certainly not Troy Andersen, since he's relatively new to the position. But if you haven't seen it, the way I look at it, and I don't know how others do, Adam, you might have a response to this, but if you don't see it on tape, then it's a projection.
Greg, when we were first covering the league, decades ago, linebackers that were under 240 or even 230, they were a non-starter for teams. But now it's changed. The league will go smaller and faster. So you look at Christian Harris of Alabama. He's under 230. That's not prototypically what you look for, but we're not back in the 80s and 90s. This is, we're moving ahead here. Guys are smaller and faster. Yeah. So what do you think of his tape?
I really like Christian Harris a lot. Keep one thing in mind. He came out of Baton Rouge. He played safety and corner in high school. He was not a linebacker. Amazingly enough, he didn't get an offer from LSU. So he goes to Alabama, and he's pretty much a starter right from the start. Okay, think about that. So this kid has to be really smart to become a starter at a position he never played for Nick Saban. I really like his tape a lot. I know, he was 226 at the combine. He's a very, very good athlete. He can play underneath zone. He can man match on tight ends and backs. There were times he matched up on wide receivers, depending on the coverage call. He's got really good quickness in the box as a run defender. See, a lot of times players like this, even though they're not, he's under 230 pounds, he showed some pop on contact. He can kind of slip and avoid blocks without losing his gap integrity. He played fast. I mean, he ran a 4.44 for a linebacker. That is really, really good. I think he'll be an ascending player. I think this kid's only getting better, given that the fact that he didn't play linebacker until he got to college.
It's amazing.
Do you like his tape and his understanding of defense right now a little more than Troy Andersen? I feel like with Andersen, you're getting traits. You're getting tons of traits, but with Christian Harris, you're getting good traits, but also a knowledge of the position.
Yeah, I mean, and Harris has very good traits too. I mean, obviously Andersen weighs more and he's taller, and you always like bigger if you can. But Harris is a really good prospect. Andersen, I think, is a little bit of a work in progress, which doesn't mean Andersen can't become a really good player. It depends what you're looking for. If the Eagles, if the Eagles had to play tomorrow, who would be their two nickel linebackers?
I guess Kaiser White, and depending on the health of Davion Taylor, if he comes back healthy, I imagine he would be the other one.
Yep, for sure.
That would probably make sense.
Yeah.
White will be an upgrade for sure. So it's White and Taylor, I guess. Andersen probably, if he was drafted, and he wouldn't be a first-round pick, he would be a guy that would end up playing special teams and may have a role here and there, but he would not play in the nickel. Harris would probably compete for a nickel spot right off the bat. He played at the highest level of college football. He's a really good prospect.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, I imagine that we've talked about Davion Taylor and what he can be, but he has not been able to be it yet because of injury. So I imagine if the Eagles draft a linebacker anytime first 3 rounds, that person will have the opportunity to compete with Davion Taylor and TJ Edwards to be that second off the ball nickel linebacker.
I would be shocked if they drafted a linebacker in the first 3 rounds. I just knowing the way they think. We've been through this 100 times. They just don't think that way.
And so you think, again, there's no right or wrong here, but you think they'd be comfortable going into the season with White and Taylor as their nickel linebackers?
They like White a lot. Okay, they think this could be a marriage longer than 1 year. He's better than any of these other 1-year guys they've signed recently. Much better, as a matter of fact, in talent and tape. But with Geoff just talked about with Davion Taylor, guy's been hurt a lot. I don't know that you can depend on him. And then they have TJ Edwards, who's more of a first and second down guy. And we know that they're going to be mostly a 2 linebacker defense. It's just to me, the way that they've thought for decades. There's a reason why they haven't drafted a true linebacker in 43 years in the first round. There's a reason for it. They just don't value it.
Plus, to answer your question, Greg, would they be comfortable going in with Kaiser White and Davion Taylor? They were comfortable last year going into the season with Eric Wilson and Alex Singleton as their nickel linebackers. And the year before that, they were comfortable going in with Duke Riley and Nate Gary, if I remember correctly, as their starting nickel linebackers week 1, which, as you know, of course, it changed over the course of the year, as it always does.
Well, now that Gannon's there, I mean, they clearly thought Wilson would be a better player than he was, and they ended up cutting him. So that was a big – I mean, they thought they needed an upgrade a year ago, and they signed Wilson. This year, they clearly thought they needed an upgrade, and they signed White. So, again, we don't know if they feel the upgrade is now complete, if the tune-up is now complete, or if they have to go back into the shop one more time. I guess we'll find that out.
That's the argument Adam and I have. Do they finally learn from their past mistakes? Because, as you mentioned, Greg, I mean, this thing goes back to Corey Nelson a few years ago from the Broncos, and then they tried the kid from the Chargers a couple of years ago, Latavius Murray. Now, he retired. That's not their fault. But they have really tried the 1-year placeholder linebacker, thinking they're getting a better version of the last year's, and it's just not worked for them. And I've said every 10 years they seem to draft a linebacker in the second round. They did it with Michael Kendricks in 2012. I think, or 2013. So to me, it's right about that time. But I totally understand Adam's point that he still wouldn't see it happening this year.
Well, until they do it, you just can't say
Exactly.
they will do it.
Exactly.
They haven't.
It's basically, Greg, the one thing I would say is this team, we on these draft shows, we try to also focus not only the Eagles mostly with them, but we'll talk about other teams as well. If you talk to general managers of other teams, they see the league has evolving in recent years. Clearly, you need coverage linebackers. Greg, you've taught us that in our show for a couple of years now. And the Eagles see that. They see Kaiser White as a smaller guy who could cover.
Well,
so
because he was a safety in college.
What's that?
He was a safety in college. So
you've got Davion Taylor, who's a raw but very athletic kid who they drafted to be a nickel linebacker. That's what we were told. So what when they're only going to play 2 linebackers, why would you draft a linebacker early? It's counterintuitive to the way they think. That's why I'd be shocked.
And they may feel, Adam, and then we'll move on because we want to get to some more guys.
Yeah.
But they may feel that if healthy, that they've got 2 nickel linebackers who fill the role, and that what they're looking for now are compete and depth guys, as opposed to, hey, we need a player to play. Because you're right, Taylor was a 3rd-round pick, drafted for a reason, and he's a really good athlete. And obviously, we don't know yet what he is. There was incremental improvement a year ago until he got hurt and was lost for the season. So they probably feel with that incremental improvement, and now he's healthy, and now bringing in White, who does have that college safety background, that they do have their 2 nickel linebackers, and they're ready to go.
Yeah, and that's something Adam and I have talked about. I would argue with this defensive coordinator and with what they do defensively, that it would be time for them to actually put some higher investment in the draft on a little bit more athleticism at the position. But we'll see if they actually do that or not. So why don't we talk about speaking of athleticism, the 2 Georgia kids, Greg, if you could kind of compare and contrast, which one do you like most for, say, what the Eagles do defensively, or which one do you like in general out of the 2? We're talking about Quay Walker and Channing Tindall.
Well, Quay Walker to me is very prototypical. I think he's the kind of guy that can pretty much do anything. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's 6'4", 240 pounds. His measurables are phenomenal. He ran a 4.5 240. He has size, length, play speed, and range. He can key and diagnose. He sees things. I think he has the full complement of traits needed to become a quality starting linebacker, and perhaps more. When I say more, I mean a really good player. If you remember, a year ago, Washington drafted Jamin Davis out of Kentucky in the 1st round. I believe it was the 20th pick in the draft. I think Quay Walker's a better prospect than Jamin Davis. I think he plays much better with his eyes than David did. And that, by the way, showed up with Davis as a rookie in Washington. He's a player. I mean, I watched a ton of Georgia tape because they had so many players. The more I watched Walker, the more I liked him. I think he is one of the best stacked linebacker prospects in this draft class. And if the Eagles were not to take him in the 1st round, I do not believe he would be there in the 2nd round.
Interesting. Okay. And then Tindall?
Yeah.
Tindall's a little different. Tindall is much more compact and coiled, just the way he's built. And he was used by Georgia as a pass rusher in many sub-package situations, often on the edge. So he's a different cat, but he did play in the box as well. He strikes me certainly as someone who would start his career as a sub-package player because of his ability to rush the quarterback. He's 6'2", he's 230, ran exceptionally well. For whatever this means, his vertical jump was off the charts at 42 inches. He had a phenomenal 10-yard split in the 40, which a lot of teams look at, as you guys know. He's a blitzer. He's a pass rusher. I think that he can develop into a starting 3-down linebacker with sub-package versatility, as I said, because you can move him around to rush the quarterback. He rushed off the edge. He rushed as a blitzer from inside. I just like the way he moved. He's very compact. He has really good balance and body control. He's the more he's another guy, the more I watch, the more I like. He was kind of the third guy because Nakobe Dean was the guy everybody talks about, then Walker, then Tyndall. Tyndall was really interesting to me.
A guy, Greg, a lot of teams have mentioned to me of a smaller school guy, but has a chance to be a starter potentially year one, depending, of course, which scheme he goes to and who's coaching him. Chad Muma from Wyoming. What do you think of his tape?
Yeah, I liked his tape a lot. Another guy, he'll get the level of competition label lobbied at him, because he played at Wyoming, although I'm sure Logan Wilson's short career with the Bengals will help him there because Logan Wilson came out of Wyoming. This guy plays with high level intensity, really competitive. What really stands out about him is he tackles. When he gets there, he tackles, and he tackles with force. And, it's funny to say that because you just assume guys do that. But as we all know, that's not always the case. I thought he was really good seeing things. Again, the key and diagnose element. His reactions within the box were quick. He worked well in confined space, both slipping blocks and playing off blocks, because he is 6'3", 240 pounds. So he's a big man too. What will concern some people is he's a little high cut, which raises questions about transition, change of direction. So that will be an issue for some. But I think he's a really strong prospect. I really like him. There'll be questions about the ability to match up man-to-man to tight ends. He didn't really do that at Wyoming. So we'll see about that. But, he kind of reminded me, and this player came out a year ago and was a good prospect and went to the New Orleans Saints in the second round. He kind of reminded me of Pete Werner. I don't know if you remember him coming out of Ohio State a year ago.
Yep.
Both about 6'3", both about 240, just really good players.
Right. All right, let's finish off linebackers with let's talk about the two guys from Wisconsin. Obviously, Leo Chanel. There's Jack Sanborn, two different guys, and I think Chanel is obviously the higher rated one. But let's talk about what we know. The Eagles like Wisconsin guys, right? They've got T.J. Edwards there, and Wisconsin always puts out some pretty good defensive prospects in general.
Yeah, he's fascinating because he kind of blew up the combine, and he definitely got people's attention. He's got a very strong, compact build. He's got sudden, explosive movement traits in confined space, and he plays with power and velocity and strong hands. I mean, when this guy attacks downhill, it doesn't matter. There could be a wall in front of him. He's going to run through it. That's the way he plays. He shoots gaps. He collisions offensive linemen, but he plays with good balance and body control. He's got functional range outside the box, but not great range. He's not one of those sideline to sideline guys. That's not his game. But he plays incredibly hard. He never gives up, so he makes a lot of second reaction type plays as well. But as I said, he's a little tight-hipped. He's a little linear. He's not an explosive straight line guy for distance.
Sounds like a vintage Wisconsin linebacker, Greg. I mean, that's the Wisconsin way right there, what you just described.
Yeah, and Jimmy Leonard is their D coordinator, former safety in the league.
Yeah.
So they blitz a ton. So both Chanel and Jack Sanborn, the other linebacker, they blitzed a ton.
Played for the
Chanel
Ravens.
Was pretty good at it. He showed the ability. He just drives through half a man and he closes, to the quarterback with burst. So the question is this guy scheme specific? In other words, if you draft him because he's such a good blitzer and was used that way very often in the context of Wisconsin's offense, do you have to draft him with the idea that in my defense, he's going to have to do that because that was so much a part of his game and who he was at Wisconsin? And that to me is an unanswerable, but I think it's a question that needs to be discussed.
Another guy then who goes forward a little bit better than backwards, you would say?
Yeah, he's not a backwards player without question. He's not that guy at all. I ended in my transition saying that I think he will be team and scheme specific since you do not want to inhibit his blitzability because the tape tells you that was one of his strongest traits. So while he can play as a stack backer in a more conventional fashion, he's such a good blitzer.
Nice.
One more linebacker, Jesse Luketa from Penn State.
Yeah, I didn't do
Oh,
him.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
didn't
you
do him.
okay.
And he actually played a lot on the line of scrimmage just because
Okay.
I saw a lot of Penn State.
Gotcha.
I just, without having done him in detail, I'm not sure what he is. And
Okay.
that's not a negative statement because I think he's actually a good player. I don't know what he is. He played a ton on the ball.
Let's go to safety, and a guy that we didn't talk about yet, and a lot of DB coaches I spoke with love his versatility. It's Jalen Petrie from Baylor, who did visit the Eagles.
Yeah, Jason Petrie is
Jalen Petrie, my bad.
Jalen Petrie. He's a great college player, a great college player. I just was uncertain as to what his role in the NFL is. And I think there's always guys like this, and I am so anxious to see where he gets drafted because, as you know, different teams and different scouts and evaluators have different views of what they look for when they draft guys, obviously. Some guys say, hey, if the guy produced in college, he's going to produce in the NFL. And if you're a believer in that, then you love Jalen Petrie. To me, he played what they call the star position, which had become well known over these last number of years with Jalen Ramsey in the NFL. But this guy's not Jalen Ramsey. And the star position is really there's three elements to it. You're an outside linebacker, you're a box safety, and you're a slot corner. That's what the star position is. He played the high percentage of his snaps at slot corner. So it's easy to say he's a slot corner, but he didn't match up man-to-man very often at all on receivers. So if you say he's a slot corner, is he going to match up to quality slot receivers man-to-man? He's a really good blitzer. Oftentimes he blitzed, and they had him blitz against offensive tackles. That's not going to happen in the NFL. We know that. So I almost came away, despite the fact that I think he's a really good football player, I almost felt like, what is he? And I thought he's kind of like a dime safety to me. And if that's the way people see him, he will not be a top 50 pick. But I could be seeing him totally differently than others. And if you really believe he can be a big-time slot corner who can do all the things asked of a slot corner, and there's many things that are asked of a slot corner, in addition to having some other versatile value, then you could easily see him as a top 50 pick. I'm just uncertain as to what he is.
I feel like that's the role the Patriots once used for Kyle Arrington, a dime safety who could also blitz. You remember Arrington had a bunch of sacks one year? He was a former Eagle from Hofstra. The Eagles had no use for him, and then he winds up on the Patriots, and he winds up being a sub-package player and a blitzer for them because they're very good with D-backs and knowing how to use them.
He weighs less. It's funny you mentioned the Patriots. He weighs less, but in some ways, is he Adrian Phillips, who's been, I thought he was a free agent, Adam. Is he not with the Patriots anymore?
Yeah, he's with the Patriots. He signed an extension last season.
Oh, he did? Okay, yeah. I mean, and he's a guy that came out of Texas, and I remember doing him and saying, and that's one of those I got right, saying he's kind of a dime player. Now, the Patriots, because Bill Belichick does a lot of different things and sees players differently, he's much more than that for the Patriots, but he's essentially kind of a box player. He's maybe 210 pounds, which is more than Petrie. But he's a really important player for the Patriots. And I could see Petrie in that kind of role because he's really aware, savvy, smart, sees it, gets it. I just don't know if he's a slot corner in a strict sense, that he's going to line up man-to-man on big-time slot receivers. Maybe he can do that. The tape, that's a projection based on tape.
Sure. Greg, let's talk about the another Georgia kid, Lewis Cine. I think I pronounced that correct. It's Cine, Cine, who I talked to some teams and they really like his. I feel like this is one of those guys who can go either really high or can actually drift down a little bit just based on the teams that are selecting where they're selecting at. What have you seen from him?
Well, this guy is fun to watch because this guy, he is a high-level competitor. He's urgent. Any tape you turn on, you'll see him run either downhill or sideline to sideline and lay the wood. That's what this guy's an attitude player. he can help set the tone and tempo for an entire defense. He plays to his 40 time, which was phenomenal, 4.37. He's over 6'2". He's very straight line and linear just because the way he's built. So he's not really a change of direction athlete. He's a straight line athlete. His game is built on speed. It's built on aggressiveness. He's a see it and hit it player. He did match up a ton man to man on tight ends at Georgia. They just didn't play a lot of good tight ends because there weren't really good tight ends in college football this year. So the question is, what is he? Can he play in the post? He did that too at Georgia. Is he a box player? Probably. I think probably the best defense for him would be cover 4, because in cover 4, safeties have a run responsibility. He can play downhill and be a factor in the run game. The question there is, because I don't think he plays great going backwards, is you start getting into cover 4 and you get those inside slot receivers, wide receivers who run vertically right at him. But he's got physical and competitive traits to be a starting safety. He's an alpha dog mindset. You love the way he plays. And if you just turn on the tape, you're going to see this guy run and hit. He's kind of fun to watch.
So based on your description, if you're kind of a Tampa 2 type team, if you're a heavy quarters type, which a lot of teams are, maybe not your cup, like you might like him, but question the exact fit in your defense.
Well, the big question with him is, even though there were many snaps of being a single high post safety at Georgia, which he probably can do, I don't think he's at his best retreating.
Okay.
So that's the concern you have even in cover 4. You love him in cover 4 because of his the run game element, but you're just concerned if, you're playing cover 4 and, you're playing the Bengals and Jamar Chase lines up in the slot, in a 2-by-2 set, that's when you have your concern.
Okay.
One corner, he did visit the Eagles, and he's really small. I'm kind of surprised the Eagles brought Marcus Jones in. I don't know what it would be, but he's so small. What do you think of his tape?
I love Marcus Jones.
Okay.
Marcus Jones is, yes, he's 5'8". He has piston-like feet. He's not going to play on the outside in the NFL, Adam. We know that. He's 5'8".
Yep.
He played on the outside in college. There were times there was an issue. I mean, there were times he got beat simply because he couldn't play contested balls. He's 5'8". But he played in the slot. He played safety at times at Houston. I kind of finished watching him and thought to myself, this is the one guy who I believe is similar stylistically and how he could be deployed. Okay, I'm not saying he's the same guy, because the guy I'm about to mention, had first-round traits and has turned out to be a phenomenal pro, arguably a Hall of Fame type player. But I think the way he can be deployed in the NFL is similar to Tyrann Mathieu.
Oh, wow. So he was a movable chess piece kind of guy, matchups and so forth?
Because he played slot. He played safety at Houston. He's an explosive athlete. I mean, he's twitchy. He's sudden. He's explosive. He's smooth. He's fluid. I mean, he's seamless in his change of direction. I mean, he's physical. I mean, he's 5'8", but he's physical. He plays with swagger. I really like Marcus Jones. He's just 5'8". That's
also
not
a returner, correct? He's a returner as well, I believe.
Oh, and that's the other factor. He immediately becomes your return man. I think he had 9 return touchdowns at Houston. He's an unbelievable return man.
Well, hey, Greg, here would be my question, because we've had this, you and I have had this discussion for years. To me, it's kind of like, okay, general manager meets with the personnel director and the defense coordinator and says, okay, this guy does not meet anything that we're looking for in height. This goes for all 32 teams. He's short arms. He's 175 pounds, but his tape is phenomenal. Is there a way we could use this kid in our scheme, right? That because how do you justify it?
Well, that's the discussion. You don't draft him without having a sense of why you're drafting him, Adam. I mean, in my view, again, I'm not sitting in the rooms, but I've been doing this for a while. I've talked to a lot of people, as you well know, for a long time, not just this year, for years and years and years. You can't just say, okay, let's draft Marcus Jones. We like his tape. That's great. and then you get him into your OTAs, and you go, well, what the hell are we going to do with this kid?
He's
You
just
have
not
to have
corner,
a
Right.
plan for why you drafted him.
But he's not he's not to
He's
you.
not
you
an outside corner.
Right. But
You know,
Matthew,
keep in mind, Mike Hilton is 5'9".
Right.
He can play in the slot tomorrow. You know, so you might see him as a slot corner right now. But I think he's more than that. I think he's better than that.
That's interesting. The Eagles have Avonte Maddox. He's not going anywhere, so he's
well. That's
entrenched
the
in the
issue
slot.
for the Eagles is Avonte Maddox just signed a 3 or 4 year deal on him.
Yeah, he signed I think a 3-year extension. So but
and he's not going to play outside. They know he's not.
But if you play him as I know this is kind of deep thinking here, but this is more of a matchup player. Tyrann Mathieu became a matchup player later in his career, and a really good one. That's how he made a lot of money.
Right.
I like your thoughts. I'm interested to see where he goes and whoever the D coordinator is.
I mean, so what happens? What happens if Tyrann Mathieu, if Marcus Jones is one of your starting safeties? Okay, because Tyrann Mathieu is technically a starting safety. Okay?
Yep.
And then when they go to their sub, he either becomes a slot corner, or because if you play dime, you can play with 2 slot corners if it's a 2x2 set.
Right.
So, or what the Chiefs do with Tyrann Mathieu, if they play cover 2, he's the middle hole defender. And then they use him as a robber as well. So Marcus Jones can do all that. You know, so again, you know, I really like the player. He's just not an outside corner.
Sure. And there goes your argument about can you use him in your sub packages more depending on the scheme you're playing than you would Adam, say the Christian Harris or the Quay Walkers of the world who are more just off the ball linebackers. Could you kind of fudge this guy in, as Greg is saying, like a Tyrann Mathieu, where you have Maddox on the field and you have Marcus Jones on the field and you have Epps on the field and you have, you know, Kazir White. Now you got a bunch of fast coverage guys. So I can see.
Well, he would increase the speed quotient of your defense big time.
Yeah, I can see the wheels turning there in the minds of the Eagles. That's an interesting one.
Yep.
One last defensive back, Greg. Maryland. I feel like Maryland always puts out really good athletes sometimes, you know, going back to the Sean Merriman and Vernon Davis days. But Nick Cross, the safety for Maryland, what have you seen from him?
Yeah, I watched quite a bit of Nick Cross because he was one of those guys I kept watching. See, safeties and corners, you got to watch a lot of tape. You just have to, and that's why it takes time, and that's why, as a one-man scouting service, I can't watch 300 guys because I don't do this all year round. Nick Cross has great measurables, okay? He ran the fastest 40 time of any safety at the combine. He ran a 4.34. That's pretty remarkable for a 6 foot, 212-pound man. He's got outstanding size, speed profile. You don't see that very often. He predominantly played on the back end in Maryland's defense, both two shell and post, but there were significant snaps in the box as well. He matched up man-to-man on tight end, so you saw that on tape. He was another guy in some ways similar to Lewis Cine in that when he was a back-end safety, he would run with velocity and he would hit. That's the way he made his hits. When he played in the box, he wasn't necessarily a big hitter, but he was a strong run defender. He had a good feel for gap integrity, and he consistently executed his run game gap responsibilities. This guy's a good player. He certainly has the size and play strength to match up to tight ends. Can he do that versus the high-level tight ends? You don't know, but he did play against tight ends. I thought he had some issues with his eye discipline as a back-end safety. That needs to be worked on. What he was seeing and how he reacted to it. That's something that showed up on tape. But I think he's a strong, multidimensional safety prospect. He's got the athletic and physical traits you look for. I really liked him. I think that he's a really good prospect.
Let me ask you to wrap this up on safeties, Greg, because let's put Kyle Hamilton aside. He's, a great prospect, might go in the top 10. If you're picking in the first round and you're looking at safety, it's one of your future needs. We talked about Daxton Hill. We talked a little about Jaquan Brisker, but it sounds like the way you've described both Petre and Cross and some of the other safeties here we've talked about, Cine. Do you feel like there's a whole lot of drop off there between the Daxton Hills and whoever? I'm probably missing another first round safety, but and this group that we just discussed today.
Well, it's not a matter of drop off. They're different. You have to just, that's the thing. That's why I'm not a list guy. And, and
Right.
we joke about that for, every year about I'm not a list guy, but I'm not a list guy because it's hard to compare guys. Daxton Hill was a field safety in Michigan's base defense and a slot corner in their sub defense. So you can't necessarily compare what Daxton Hill did in college to what Jaquan Brister did in college. They did different things. Now, if you see them playing the exact same position in your defense, then you have to compare them. But, that becomes a team thing. I personally think Daxton Hill has traits, and I actually spoke with someone on a team who feels the exact same way. I think Daxton Hill has the traits to be an outside corner in the NFL. So, whereas Jaquan Brister, to me, Jaquan Brister is not as athletically explosive as either Nick Cross or Lewis Cine, but Jaquan Brister does everything really well and was asked to do everything at Penn State. So to me, Jaquan Brister is an NFL-ready safety who you could line up day one because he's done everything. Now, like I said, he's not athletically explosive. He's not unathletic. He's just not an, oh my God, look at that on the tape. But, he reminded me of the Jordan Poyers and the Micah Hydes, the guys that do everything, but they don't necessarily have that athleticism that jumps off the charts. Although I remember Hyde made an interception, I guess against Mac Jones. That was ridiculous this year, but still, you don't think of those guys as being, sudden explosive guys. Brister's the same way.
All right, let's go to D lineman. Let's go back to the University of Houston. Now, a guy who's tall but doesn't have the longest arms in the world, that is Logan Hall. Greg, what do you think of his tape?
You're picking guys whose tape I really, really like.
Oh,
I love
Logan Hall. Okay, you did like him. Okay.
Loved Logan Hall.
Good.
I think Logan Hall is a really high-level 3 technique prospect with versatility who can also line up on the outside. You're right. His arms they were short relative to being 6'6". They weren't ridiculously short.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Now, for instance, I like Logan Hall far more than I like Devonta Wyatt. I think Logan Hall is one of the best D-tackle prospects in this draft class, and I think his positional versatility, especially in sub fronts, enhances his value in today's NFL. I mean, this guy has length, he's got power, he's got athletic movement, he has burst and explosiveness off the ball, both laterally and vertically, going into offensive linemen, offensive guards. He jarred and controlled offensive guards. He drove them back. It was that power element of his game that consistently stood out. I really, really like Logan Hall's tape a lot, and I'm so curious to see where he gets drafted. He's one of those guys that I've seen him, for the people that do like the top 50, the top 100.
Yeah, sure.
I've seen him all over. So I don't know, but I really liked his tape a lot.
Boy, I give you props because last year you put us on to another Houston kid, Peyton Turner, who not a lot of people were discussing until about 3 or 4 days before the draft, and then he went in the first round. Yeah, I forget. Was it the Saints? I forget who took him.
He got hurt, unfortunately, but he's super long. Right. Turner. Yep.
Yeah, and now you like both Logan Hall and Marcus Jones. So Houston putting out some pretty good athletes there and some good football players. Let's and I believe both those Houston guys, Hall and Jones, visited the Eagles. So 2 guys to definitely keep an eye on. Greg, I want to go to offensive line because it was told to me, I have good sourcing on this, that you cannot discount the Eagles addressing interior offensive line and anywhere in the draft, anywhere. So we know how much of an emphasis they put on the interior offensive line. So we also know Jason Kelsey, this should be his last year, although you never know with him. Let's go with the guy from Tulsa that visited the Eagles, Tyler Smith.
Tyler Smith was a trip.
Wait, let me guess. You love his tape.
No.
He
God,
I got to hear this.
Because Tyler Smith is a young kid. I think he's only 20 years old. Okay. And Tyler Smith is a really high-level athlete. Okay. He's over 6'4". He's 325. He's got long arms. He's got a ridiculous wingspan. He plays tenaciously and competitively. He's one of those guys. You love him. He has no freaking idea how to pass protect. That's going to have to be reworked. Just fundamental technique. I mean, it was even for someone like myself. I'm not an offensive line guru by any means, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my God. And there are many others who believe that, by the way. But he is tantalizing, guys, because he's got outstanding size, length, strength, movement, competitiveness. He's got all of that. He just needs to learn how to pass protect. Some could suggest an initial move inside to guard, which reduces obviously the space with which he would have to work, and it emphasizes the strength, power, nasty quotient of his game. Some might suggest that makes sense early in his career, help him clean up kind of his undisciplined, unknowing play. But I think down the road, you'd like this kid at tackle, but maybe he starts at guard.
Is it an oversetting issue, footwork issue, or the hands and the feet don't work? It's everything.
It's everything.
Wow.
I mean, in my weaknesses, part of my evaluation sheet, I had 9 weaknesses.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Wow. Well, he's a project. Sounds like a project. So
he's a project.
He needs work. So maybe.
But he's fun. He's fun.
Yeah. Okay. But the competitive part about it is great for a guy who's trying to figure it out. But if he's super competitive,
he's super competitive.
That gives you hope. That gives you hope if you're an offensive line coach to get your hands on him and.
Because he had no technique at him, he had so many holding penalties, and they see that issue. And in college, they don't even call as many as they do in the NFL.
Yeah, interesting stuff, man. Wow. Okay, and then do you have to see Dylan Parham from our school, Memphis? We love talking about Memphis on the show.
I did. I was walking in Memphis.
I know that song.
Yeah.
Good.
He's another guy whose tape's really good. Like he had an unbelievable matchup with Logan Hall because they're in the same conference. And Parham showed his full array of traits in that. That could have been a teaching tape game. He was phenomenal against Hall. I mean, Hall had good snaps too, but I mean, it was really just a fun matchup to watch. This guy is a fundamentally sound guard. He could probably play center too without a problem. Strength, power, every snap is the same, super consistent. I think that he has great balance, body control. His movement is compact and efficient. I just think this guy is a really good football player, really good player. And given he's only 6'2", his arm length was pretty good. So, but again, arm length, while it's important inside, it's obviously more important for tackles, but I really like Dylan Parham a lot. See, to me, I think he's a day one starter. Now, if the Eagles draft him, he probably isn't, but I think he's a day one starter, and he'll be a really good player.
Does he excel out? On the outside sweeps? Can you pull him anywhere? Screen game? Does he have that kind of agility and athleticism, or is he more the mauler, push guys around? What would you say?
I don't know if he's like a true. I mean, he was used as a puller in the gap scheme run game, but that's not pulling all the way outside necessarily.
Right.
So I don't know if you'd use him on outside pulls. I think he's a good athlete. I mean, I don't think he's a bad athlete. But I don't think that's the best way to use him.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. And pass protection, I imagine, is a lot better than the other guy that we just spoke of, Tyler Smith.
Yeah, well, they're different positions, but yes.
Oh, that's true.
Parham is a refined player.
Right.
I mean, and the amazing thing about Parham is he was a tight end and D lineman in high school. He made the switch to offensive line at Memphis.
Wow.
He's a real, he's one of those guys that, obviously not going to be a first round pick, but it would not surprise me if whoever drafts him, and ideally you draft him because you have a need at the position, you plug him in and you don't worry about him. I think to me, and I could be dead wrong, because like I said, offensive line is not, I don't view that as my high level area of expertise by any means, but he just struck me as that kind of guy.
Cool. Well, Greg, it sounds like, there's going to be some decent talent. There always is, but it sounds like there'll be some pretty decent talent. Second round, top 100, early third.
This is a really good draft for the second, third, fourth round. It's quarterbacks and the very top of the draft that is not, marquee like it is in a normal year. But as you guys know from talking to people, you probably get beyond pick, whatever number pick you want it to be. And there's a lot of really good prospects. You just don't have that that, oh my God, in the top 5.
Elite. Yeah, elite. Sure.
Who was your favorite prospect or the guy whose tape you just loved watching out of everybody you've watched?
Oh boy. That's a hard question. I think I'm up to about 150 guys. So
Who's number one on the Greg Cosell top 150?
That's hard. There's a lot of guys. I mean, there's guys whose tape I enjoyed watching. I'm trying to think. And there are guys who are not, necessarily big names, like I really enjoyed watching Nick Benito from Oklahoma.
Yeah,
sure.
Really enjoyed watching that.
Yeah, we thought. No, I mean though, like the guy who's the studliest guy you watched. I'm really trying to pin you down here.
God.
Only because Greg, I only ask you that because it's Jacksonville has the number 1 pick, and there's not a guy who just stands out as that's going to be the number 1 pick. I mean,
I don't think this draft has that guy, Geoff. That's the thing, you know. And like for instance, Aiden Hutchinson to me is going to be a really good pro.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he'll be special, but you're going to line him up, and you're going to feel pretty good about Aiden Hutchinson every single snap, every single week.
Sure.
Is he going to be, he's not TJ Watt as a pass rusher. He's not going to be that guy, but you're going to line him up and you're going to feel really good about it.
If he becomes Ryan Kerrigan for Ryan Kerrigan's like first 7 or 8 years when he was really good, is that a kind of guy you could see being when you watch Hutchinson?
Ryan Kerrigan was a first-round pick.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you see Hutchinson being a guy based on your tape study? It's all about projection.
Yeah, I do.
Being a 6 to 8 year starter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think Aiden Hutchinson's going to be a really good player. He's just not. I mean, when you think of pass rushers, sort of dominant pass rushers, I don't know if you think of him quite that way, but he'll be a really good player.
All right. If I were to tell you a player from this draft is going to make 6 Pro Bowls and 3 All-Pro teams, who's that player going to be?
Oh, God almighty. Geoff,
it's either going to be what? Sauce Gardner, or it's going to be Evan Neal or Ike Ekwonu. I mean, I'm just trying here, Greg.
I know. I'm so bad with those kinds of questions. God, who's like going to be, who do I think is going to be that guy?
How about this?
I think that. All right, I'll tell you the guy I think.
Okay.
This is purely based on tape, okay? And
of course.
And I know he's had some head case issues, so it could not work out at all.
Okay.
And I actually think he's the best receiving prospect in this draft class, hands down. And I think that's George Pickens.
Love that. Wow. Okay. I was not expecting you to say that, but that's pretty interesting.
George Pickens is 6'3". He can run. He stepped into the SEC as a true freshman and led Georgia in receiving.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was a big time recruit. I think he's the best receiving prospect in this draft class. He won't be drafted that way because I have heard that some people are concerned about some other things. Not that he's, a bad kid. I mean, he hasn't done anything, I don't think, illegal or anything like that.
Right.
But, apparently from what I've heard, I'm only repeating what I've heard because I don't go there with this, but people have told me he's entitled and all that stuff. He wouldn't be the first wide receiver who's entitled and who's a prima donna, as we know.
Right.
But he's a really high-level talent.
Awesome. I love it. We'll leave it at that. All right. Our next show with you will be a recap of the Eagles pick and the draft. So we look forward to getting you one more time on the Intel with Greg Cosell. This was great stuff. Look forward to it. I hope everybody's enjoyed this preview series from free agency to the draft. And I'm sure they will get a kick out of the next one when we recap everything that goes on over draft weekend. So for Adam Caplan and Greg Cosell, I'm Geoff Mosher. Thanks to all of you. You've been watching the Intel with Greg Cosell.